Somewhere right now, someone is watching a grainy video on the internet and becoming absolutely convinced that the moon landing was staged in a Hollywood studio. And here's the thing. The arguments they're hearing actually sound pretty good, until you know what to look for. Today we're going to tear apart every major moon landing conspiracy theory, one by one, and by the end of this video, you'll have the exact answers to shut down every single one. We're covering the 5 biggest claims, the flag that supposedly waves in a vacuum, the missing stars in the photos, the Van Allen radiation belt that was supposedly deadly, the theory that Stanley Kubrick secretly filmed the whole thing, and the one that conspiracy theorists never want to answer, why the Soviet Union never said a word. If there's no air on the moon, why does the flag wave? This is the big one, the one that hooks people first. You look at the footage from Apollo 11 and the flag is clearly moving, rippling. How is that possible in a vacuum with no wind? Here's the thing, nobody said the flag wasn't moving. What the conspiracy theorists miss is why it was moving. The astronauts had just finished planting it. They twisted it into the ground. When you let go of something you've been rotating, it oscillates. It swings and ripples from the residual motion of being handled not from wind, and because there's no air on the moon to create drag, that motion takes longer to stop than it would on Earth. So it looks more dramatic, not less. Look closely at the footage. The flag moves when the astronauts touch it or move near it, and when nobody touches it, it stops. Completely still. Because there's nothing to move it. NASA actually designed the flag specifically for this mission. It had a horizontal rod sewn along the top edge to hold it extended, because they knew a regular flag would hang limp. That rod is what gives it the shape of a flag waving even when it's completely still. The flag moves exactly the way physics says it should move in a vacuum. The conspiracy theorists got the physics right, and then drew exactly the wrong conclusion. Now, if they were really in space, where are the stars? Look at any photo from the Apollo missions. The sky is completely black. Not a single star. If they were really out there in the void of space, shouldn't the sky be full of stars? This one is pure photography, and once you understand it, you'll never be confused again. Your eyes and your camera both work the same way. They adjust to the brightness of whatever they're looking at. On the lunar surface in daylight, the sun is full strength with no atmosphere to filter it. The astronauts in their white suits, the bright lunar surface, the equipment, all of it is blazing in direct sunlight. To photograph that scene correctly, you need a fast shutter speed and a narrow aperture. Those settings are set for the bright daylight on the surface. Stars are incredibly dim compared to a sunlit lunar landscape. With the camera set for bright daylight conditions, the stars simply don't register on film, exactly the same way they don't show up in any daylight photograph taken on Earth. Take a photo outside on a sunny day and count the stars you can see. 0. If NASA had wanted to fake the stars, they would have added them. Instead, the absence of stars is exactly what real photography in those conditions produces. The missing stars aren't evidence of a hoax. They're evidence that the photos were taken in real blazing sunlight, which is exactly what the moon looks like. Now, the Van Allen belts would have killed every astronaut. The Van Allen radiation belts are 2 donut-shaped regions surrounding Earth filled with charged particles trapped by Earth's magnetic field. They're genuinely dangerous. So how did astronauts fly through them without dying? 2 reasons. First, trajectory. The Apollo missions didn't fly through the thickest part of the belts. Mission planners specifically chose a flight path that minimized exposure time and targeted the thinner regions. The total transit through the belts took roughly 30 minutes each way. Second, dose. The radiation astronauts received during the full mission was real but manageable, roughly equivalent to a few chest x-rays. Modern calculations put the Apollo 11 crew's total radiation dose at around 0.18 rem, well below the threshold that causes acute radiation sickness. Some long-haul airline pilots accumulate more radiation exposure over the course of a year than the Apollo astronauts received on their moon missions. The Van Allen belts are dangerous if you park in them. They're survivable if you transit through the thinner sections quickly, which is exactly what Apollo did. The radiation concern was real, which is why NASA spent years calculating how to minimize exposure. The answer was careful trajectory planning, not Hollywood. A filmmaker once admitted that Kubrick directed the moon landing. This one has a specific origin. In 2002, a man was interviewed on camera claiming to be Stanley Kubrick, confessing that he helped NASA fake the moon landing footage. The video spread widely. There was just one problem. Stanley Kubrick died in 1999. 3 years before the interview. The man in the video was a French filmmaker named T. Patrick Murray, who had made a mockumentary, a deliberately fictional film presented as documentary-style entertainment. The entire confession was fiction. When the hoax was exposed, Murray released the unedited footage, showing the actor being briefed on what to say. The actual connection between Kubrick and the moon landing is this. Kubrick's 1968 film about space was so visually impressive that NASA contacted him about consulting on a classified film. Not to fake the moon landing, but to discuss techniques for photographing low-light space environments in case they needed backup footage if the actual broadcast quality was poor. Kubrick turned it down. There is no footage of Stanley Kubrick confessing anything. There is footage of an actor playing Stanley Kubrick in a fictional film. These are not the same thing. The Kubrick conspiracy theory is itself based on a hoax, a fake documentary that people chose to believe because they already wanted to. Now, this is the one conspiracy theorists never have a good answer for. At the height of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a brutal competition for global prestige. Space was the arena. Every American failure was a propaganda win for Moscow. Every Soviet success was front-page news around the world. The Soviets had some of the most sophisticated space tracking equipment on Earth. They were monitoring every American rocket launch, every spacecraft transmission, every piece of telemetry from Apollo missions in real time. Their scientists knew exactly what was happening. And when Apollo 11 landed on the moon on July 20th, 1969, the Soviets said nothing. No accusations of fraud, no press release claiming the footage was fake, no defectors offering proof of a conspiracy, nothing. Think about what that means. If the moon landing had been faked, the Soviet Union, with every technical means, every political motivation, and every intelligence resource at their disposal, would have exposed it instantly. Proving the American moon landing was a fraud would have been the greatest propaganda coup in the history of the Cold War. They didn't, because they couldn't, because it happened. The Russian space program later confirmed the moon landings were real. They tracked the missions independently. They received the same radio signals. They simply lost. The Soviet Union's silence isn't a coincidence. It's the most powerful confirmation of all. The one country on Earth with every reason to expose a hoax and every capability to do it looked at the evidence and said nothing. Here's what's actually remarkable about the moon landing. It was so audacious, so far beyond what seemed possible in 1969, that it genuinely looks like it could be fake. That's the paradox. The achievement was so extraordinary that it created the conditions for people to doubt it. 400,000 engineers, scientists, and technicians worked for 8 years to make it happen. The evidence is overwhelming, the physics checks out. The one country that would have loved to expose a fraud never did. The moon landing happened, and if you want to understand what it actually took to pull it off, there's a full video on the Apollo guidance computer, the 4 kilobyte machine that got 3 people to the moon and back. Links above.